Hey there, friends, and welcome to This Life Without Limits. I'm your host, Weston McWhorter, and I'm really excited to drop in with you today. I know it's been a minute since I've shared anything here, and I've just been feeling called back to this space as a way of cultivating connection and community. And frankly, I just really have missed doing it. So I'm excited to be here with you today. And I hope that over the next few moments that you find some value in what I have to share, and that maybe it will be supportive for you in some way. So, it's been about 6 years since I sat down at my dining room table in New Orleans, hit record on my iPhone, and launched this podcast in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. And over the years, I've had the privilege of sharing some really great conversations with people who have inspired me, challenged me, and really helped to guide me through a season of my life that has had more ups than downs, honestly. But it's been a season of profound challenge and profound growth, really in equal measure. And as this is the 20th episode, I just want to acknowledge my desire to not only refocus and rededicate myself to producing these episodes, but to do so in a way that reflects the evolution of my thinking as it relates to the central themes of self-inquiry and acceptance, cultivating awareness and presence, holistic health and well-being, creating a life of depth and meaning, and being of service in the world. And this episode also marks the beginning of yet another chapter in my cancer journey. And I'll just share some brief updates from the last 6 months. So after taking, almost a 9-month break from producing this podcast and stepping back really from all media for the last 4 months, I feel like I'm coming back to this place in a much clearer, more focused, and really regulated place. I remain profoundly grateful for my life, all the opportunities I have to learn and to grow and to awaken and share. So let's get into it, right? So flashing back a little bit to September 2025, which is hard to even conceptualize, last fall, overall, my physical health was pretty stable. The blood markers were increasing slowly. My doctors were beginning to consider immunotherapy. But at that point, there was really no accumulation of disease, no bulky disease in my body. And honestly, the idea of taking medicine for an indefinite period of time just really wasn't super appealing to me. And I had a pretty bumpy and stressful fall and winter. Just had some crazy stuff going on in my family. I had issues getting paid from work between Thanksgiving and Christmas, which is stressful. And then, just the general stress and chaos of what it means to be a human being living in the world today. In early December, I lost an old friend and a bandmate, my friend Brian Keeling. He passed away in December, and he had the same kind of cancer that I have. And I really grieved him hard. And in a lot of ways, I took his story and his experience on as my own. And honestly, it took me down. It really took me down. I experienced a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of uncertainty. But I finally managed to get myself to a place where I understood that we are all unique and on our own journeys in this lifetime. And, just because one outcome happens to one person doesn't mean it's going to happen to me, right? So sitting here now, that seems obvious, but, y'all, cancer is a real mindfuck sometimes. So all of that really led me to decide to take a long break from all media, social and otherwise, the news, starting in early February, because I really just came to realize that my nervous system was becoming so dysregulated by things that are out of my control. And I needed to create some separation, some space there in order to really focus on what I needed to do to heal myself. And so about that same time, my blood markers returned a really high value. This value was essentially double what it was before my original treatment in 2024. So about 98,000. And this was really troubling to everyone, not only myself, my partner, my family, but to my care team too, especially since all the previous scans that I had showed no visible disease really anywhere in my body. So just as a reminder, this blood test, it's called NavDx. It measures a specific DNA that's shed by the specific type of cancer I have in my body. So it's a very specialized test. And it measures that on a molecular level. It's a really helpful test. It's really kind of incredible and miraculous, but honestly quite nerve-wracking, especially when the results that get returned don't necessarily align with what the scans show. So I scheduled a PET CT scan for a few weeks later in mid-March, which showed an isolated tumor in my left pelvic bone. This was inside of my bone, and it was considered by my doctors to be oligometastatic, which is a word that essentially means that this metastasis was only in one location, which was encouraging in a way. However, that development essentially changed the staging of my cancer to stage 4. And as far as my care team is concerned, they would consider that to be incurable at this point. And it's funny / ironic, I guess, that, I still remember sitting in the chair with my first doctor, and, his opinion was that this cancer was so easy to treat and to eradicate, and it would be, kind of gone lickety-split. But I guess that wasn't to be in my case. So I also just want to say that that opinion is fairly common for Western medicine practitioners that are following the standard of care treatment protocol. But I just want to acknowledge that, there are plenty of people walking around, including a few that I know personally, with what would be considered stage 4 incurable disease, and they live for years and years with that condition. So in early April, my radiation doctor and I decided to employ a radiation treatment called SBRT, which stands for stereotactic body radiation therapy. And this is a very highly targeted and precise treatment to treat this tumor. It's often used in prostate cancer and or other types of cancer where you really just want to be focused. You want to focus the treatment on one specific area. So I took one more blood test before my treatment just to kind of establish a fresh baseline. And the numbers that came back were 10 times higher than what they were in February. So this was about 1.4 million. And honestly, getting those results back has really thrown everyone on my team into overdrive in terms of how to tackle this situation. So I received a week of SBRT. It's given in these really short, intense cycles. I received that in late April. And since then, I've really been focused on healing my body from that treatment. I've been getting back on my bike and into the gym. I've been eating really well, sleeping well, spending time with my partner and my kids, and really just balancing a practice of trying to be as aware and present as possible with an optimistic outlook on what's coming forward in my life without getting too attached to any specific outcomes. And then this week, in fact, just yesterday, I began taking Keytruda, which is an immunotherapy medicine that targets what's called PD-L1 proteins that are found in cancer cells, which effectively tell your body's immune system to ignore them. So this is one of the reasons that cancer is able to spread as easily and as rapidly as it does. And my tumor profile in particular is really susceptible to this medicine. I think it's the best way I can say that. And, the hope is that this treatment will certainly slow, if not completely stop the disease. That's my prayer. It's going to take time and patience to see the results. But I felt into this particular intervention for over a year. We've been talking about it in my care team since, early 2025. And it feels like the right tool at the right time to help bring complete healing to my body. So the treatment schedule for me is 1 infusion every 6 weeks, which is totally manageable. Admittedly, I don't particularly like the open-ended nature of it, meaning I don't know for how long I'll be taking it. But if it helps me get to my 108th birthday, I'm in. So, in case anyone wants more info on Keytruda, I'm going to add a link into the show notes for this episode. So to begin kind of wrapping this up, I won't go too deeply into my own personal meaning making about the mystical, metaphysical, and energetic rationale for why this disease persists in me. But, suffice it to say, I do believe that much of the heavy feelings and emotions that I've been carrying over the last several years, and honestly, several decades, continues to create an environment in me where this disease is able to persist. So there's an equal amount of healing work I'm doing in the spiritual, emotional, mental, and relational realms that is every bit as important as all of these physical interventions. And, honestly, maybe even more so in the long run. I'm really deepening in my devotion to living in a state of gratitude and prayer throughout this journey. I've said from the beginning that cancer is an initiation. It's an embodiment opportunity. And it's perhaps the greatest teacher of awareness and reality that there is. And, more than death, what I really have feared from this experience is not being wholly transformed through it. I was sitting with my therapist earlier this week, and he called me forward and suggested that, maybe I've been resisting this initiation. Maybe I'm fearful or anxious about what it means to be wholly transformed, to fully and finally release the damaging and demoralizing ideas and concepts and stories and mental models that I've held on to so tightly over the years as to become totally identified with them. To die and to be born again, awake, aware, liberated, loving, compassionate, unattached, and free. So perhaps he's right about that. All I know is that now that it's out in the light, I have the chance to live more fully into that initiation. So I think that's where I'll set this down for now. I'm at the beginning of a new phase. I'm a few months away from my 54th birthday. I've come to view this upcoming birthday as my half-life birthday. And my intention is to go long, to live fully every breath, every heartbeat, every moment, from this one to my last one. So I just want to thank you for your support, your love, your prayers, your encouragement, your kindness, your generosity. I've said this before, but, many of you will never know how deeply touched I've been over these last few years. So just thank you for that. I have boundless gratitude to God for my life and for all the love and many blessings I've been given in this lifetime. And I'm just sending that love and blessings out to each and every one of you, inviting you to be good to yourselves and be good to others and to all your relations. And we'll see you back here very soon. Take care, y'all. That's it for this episode of This Life Without Limits. I hope you enjoyed this conversation and will join me again for future episodes. If you want to stay updated on new releases, hit the subscribe button below, and don't forget to check out the show notes for additional details and links. I'd also love to hear what you think about the content of this episode, so please feel welcome to drop any comments, thoughts, questions, critique, any of that below. Thanks again for joining me, and I look forward to next time. Until then, here's to a life without limits, my friends.